As part of the Knowledge Now series with the Royal University of Bhutan, Talking Matters this week features Kinley Dorji, a lecturer and a linguist at the Paro College of Education. He talks about Dzongkha in all its aspects today. You've done a PhD thesis called Dzongkha Segments and Tone, a phonetic and phonological investigation, where you say you've discovered some unique things that you would actually like to share. In fact, even argue against the reigning discussions in Bhutan when it comes to Dzongkha as a language. A case in point is, of course, how everybody's talking about the simplification of Dzongkha, the spelling actually, and you disagree with that, La?
Yes, I would like to start with my PhD thesis findings. When we talk about language, there are basically two things. When we talk in terms of written language, we have alphabets, the letters. So, for example, English has some 26 letters, and Dzongkha has Selchi-Sumchu, 30 consonants and 4 vowels. That is used only for the written purpose. But when it comes to spoken language, we have in linguistics something called phonemes. Phonemes in the common language means distinctive sounds in the language. So my thesis, the whole thesis was actually in the sounds. In fact, in linguistics, in the study of scientific study of language, there are different areas, different structures. You start with phonology or phonetics, the study of sounds. Then as you go up, you have morphology, the study of word and word formation. One step higher, you have syntax, the study of sentence structure. Then you have the study of meaning called semantics. And finally, you have this pragmatics, where you study the use of language. But my thesis was confined to the study of sound system. And my thesis, the thesis of my PhD thesis was on two areas, the segments, the sounds, the consonants and vowels that are there in Dzongkha, and the tone, which is very unique to Dzongkha. Unique in the sense, the other language we are familiar with is English. In English, there is no tone, but in Dzongkha, we have tone.
If you could give an example that, I mean.
Yes, La. So in English, if you say, I have, you could say, I have nine relatives, or I have 9 relatives. So low and high pitch, it doesn't make any difference at the level of meaning, semantics.
I see.
Only the pronunciation becomes a little eccentric. But in Dzongkha, if you say na and na, na means sickness, you get sick. And na, which is said with a slightly higher pitch or tone, it means another thing.
Yes, sir.
So this is one unique feature, prosodic feature of Dzongkha when compared to English.
Yes.
And in terms of segments, the sounds that are there, English has got 26 alphabets, and Dzongkha has 34. But when in terms of sounds, English has 44 sounds, but Dzongkha has some 83. My PhD thesis, I enumerate around 83 sounds.
Yes.
A little more than earlier linguists have actually enumerated in Dzongkha.
Yes. But how is it that you discovered a few more sounds than what was previously known?
It happens. It happens in the study of linguistics. One reason could be because it depends on which dialect of the language you study. So the earlier linguists, they have studied dialects of Thimphu and Chapcha, for example. And my area, my research area was in Paro. So I studied this Paro dialect. And then I discovered a few additional sounds, especially with vowels. One interesting feature of Dzongkha vowel, again compared to English vowel, is that in linguistics we call it nasalization. So, for example, there's a difference. These two words are distinct in Dzongkha, pa and pa. Pa is a piece of slice of meat, and the vowel is not nasalized. It's a
Yes.
pure vowel.
I see.
And but when you say pa, ground, the vowel is nasalized. So these two words are kept distinctive by this small feature, prosodic feature called nasalization. One vowel has a nasal quality and the other doesn't have. Again, this feature is not there in English.
Yes.
So that way, when we compare the two most familiar languages to us, Dzongkha and English, Dzongkha is very distinctive in terms of the presence of unique sounds.
But you wouldn't say Dzongkha is complicated.
I would not. I would not. I think many people seem to have this misconception. When you look at the writing system of languages, there are two things. I would not use the word complicated. I would not even use the word complex. I think the right word would be linear and non-linear when it comes to writing system. If we look at English writing system, it's linear. You have the first sound, then this vowel, and so all this one after another.
Yes.
This linear. But when we look at languages like Dzongkha, then it is non-linear, meaning we have some letters on the top, some letters at the bottom. So, but Dzongkha is not only the language which uses this non-linear writing system. For example, if you look at Hindi language, Devanagari script has the same spelling writing system. And when you look at Japanese language and Chinese language, the story becomes more complex because there you don't have alphabets. You have symbols and all those signs and symbols, characters. So I don't agree with the notion that Dzongkha is difficult. And many people tend to attribute the difficulty of learning Dzongkha to the writing system. In one of the presentations by university, I argued that spelling system of Dzongkha, in fact, should enhance learning. Because in the spelling writing system of Dzongkha, unlike English again, there are lots of grammatical points, implicit grammatical points. I can give you one example. Just a moment ago, I talked about the tone, the high and low pitch. And in the dictionaries, unlike English dictionaries, we don't have the tone marks in the pronunciation. In fact, there's no clue about the pronunciation of Dzongkha words in the dictionaries. But if you study the spelling very thoroughly, the tone, whether you should say the word, whether you should pronounce the word with high tone, meaning high pitch, or low tone, is implicitly there in the spelling system.
Yes.
Now, in the spelling system, we have basically Dzongkha spelling system has these things. You have the radical, we call miji.
Yes.
You have nyenju, the prefixes that goes before miji. Then you have the gochens that you add on the top, and you have dochens you add at the bottom of the, and whatever follows is mingji, post or suffixes. Now, those words with high tone, which must be said with high tone, will always have either the gochen or the prefix.
Yes. This is very valuable knowledge, sorry.
Yes, I agree. And especially for applied linguistics, when you have to teach the language, this is very useful. So in the first place, all the radicals do not have this tone distinction, only the nasals. Nasals meaning ma, na, nya, nga, and la, we call it lateral, and then ya and wa. So you need to remember only 7 sounds, 7 radicals,
Nice.
7 phonemes or mingjis in Dzongkha when you have to pronounce a particular tone.
Yes.
So all those mingjis preceded by either nyenju or gochen would be said with high tone.
Yes.
And all those without those two features would be said with low tone.
Yes.
And if this can be brought to classroom, I think classroom teaching
This is very interesting that you tell me, because I mean I have studied Dzongkha for a few years when I was studying here, and
Yes.
if I had known this, I would not have any problems with pronunciation. I mean, you being a linguist pointing this out, I think it's important that these salient features of our language are highlighted, and I think I begin to see why you argue that simplification of spelling isn't the solution to making Dzongkha more palatable to younger people these days though.
Yes, La. Now, we have these implicit grammatical points hidden in the spelling system. Now, in the name of simplification, if we simplify, for example, we say the gochens are not pronounced, or the nyinjus, the prefixes are not pronounced. We don't need them. Let's take them out. If these are taken out, the very useful, very important implicit grammatical feature, that is just one example pertaining to tone. There are other things. For example, Dzongkha is also distinctive in vowel length. As in English, we have fill and feel. Fill and feel.
Yes.
So in fill, the vowel is shorter. In feel, the vowel is longer. And this vowel length is also distinctive in Dzongkha.
Yes.
Now, this is again implicitly hidden in the writing system. Those words which have this la and ra as suffixes, as nyinjus, will always have longer vowel. And those words without those two, without la and ra, would have shorter vowels. So my point is, it is not only the tone and vowel length. I know about these two points because these 2 points were explored in my PhD thesis.
Yes.
And if Dzongkha is scientifically explored and studied further, I think it is very rich.
It's important you point that out, because you were telling me, I mean, in the email that you sent me, that we don't have a lot of Bhutanese who actually have the required technical knowledge to be actually debating or even talking about Dzongkha, dissecting Dzongkha for that matter. You're saying that is, in your own words, very precarious.
Yes, it's very precarious. I say precarious because most of the things, because for instance, when you watch BBS programs on Dzongkha issues, everybody seems to have this or that view or opinion about Dzongkha. And when it comes to spelling and pronunciation of certain words, there is hue and cry, and people don't seem to agree. And people don't agree because they don't have this technical knowledge. Whatever they express is their intuitive knowledge. And this intuitive knowledge differs from person to person, from region to region. I'm from Paro. I would like to go by my own pronunciation and my own style of using Dzongkha, and you are from a different region. You would be influenced by your own regional dialectal differences and features. So, but DDC if I'm not wrong, DDC has few people who has technical knowledge in the scientific study of language. Actually, they could initiate, but sadly, I think it's not being done.
Why is it that, you sense almost a divorce, Bhutanese and Dzongkha? I mean, you have to take that extra step to actually speak the language that you are born into. Why do you think this has happened then? And why is it that we're making all this effort to really be comfortable with the use of Dzongkha then?
That's very interesting. That's a very interesting question. When you look at the complexity of the writing system of Dzongkha, and compare it with other languages like Hindi, Japanese, and Chinese. In one of the paper presentations, I argued that the writing system of Hindi, Japanese, Chinese, if not less, they're more difficult, they're more complex, more complicated than Dzongkha. But despite being so, when you browse internet and look for the literacy rate of these languages, these are very high. For example, Japanese literacy rate is over 99%. And in one of the websites, Ethnologue, Dzongkha's literacy rate is between 40 to 50, which is sad. So, and we tend to blame the writing system, the spelling. And Now, we can learn some valuable lessons from these languages. Like when you read literature, all these languages having equally complex writing system, they attribute their success in literacy rate to the language curriculum and language pedagogy, which are again based on scientific study of the language. Linguistics, they first study the language. How is the language used? What are the sounds? What are the consonants, vowels that are there in the language? How are words formed in, for example, Japanese? Then how are sentence structures formed? What are different shades of meaning the language has? So first, they study the language thoroughly, and the pedagogy and curriculum are based on the scientific findings. But I think this is not done in our context.
That, I mean, you would attribute then, I mean, when you speak of curriculum, I'm reminded of the time where history texts were translated into Dzongkha. And of course, one of the major difficulties, I mean, the major challenge we have in actually having more subjects in our language is the fact that we do not have enough words. For instance, we don't have enough scientific terms. Even history was difficult then. But you would say that, how you pointed out, study the language first.
Yes.
And
yes.
then I think this is where applied linguistics comes in as well,
Yes,
how you use
yes.
it.
Applied linguistics comes later.
Yes.
First, to describe the language, study the language scientifically. Then whatever findings you have from your, for instance, my PhD thesis was not applied linguistics.
Yes.
It was descriptive and theoretical. So first I described Dzongkha, then whatever findings I got from my PhD thesis, I used that findings from my Dzongkha data to build linguistic theory. Now from the same data, the findings could also be applied to applied linguistics in language teaching. And the example I just gave you, the tones, when you teach the tone system in Dzongkha, you need to just remember 7 sounds.
Yes.
And then you need to remember if those 7 sounds are preceded by gochins and nyenjus. If those are there, the tone is always high. If those are not there, the tones are always low. So this is a small part of the applied linguistics,
Yes.
which comes from, again, descriptive study of the language.
Yes. But you would feel that Dzongkha could be successfully used as a major part of the education curriculum here in the country then there?
Oh yes, I would think so. But in order that to happen, I think some things must be changed. Firstly, at the moment, I think the approach is more of prescriptive. There's this two approaches, very popular approaches in linguistics: prescriptive and descriptive. In prescriptive, languages are not scientifically studied, and then whatever grammatical points you teach to your learners are based on traditional grammar, and you sort of prescribe language. You should speak like this, you should write like that, you should pronounce this word like this and not like that.
And no explanation for why that has to be done.
Exactly. So there's no explanation. But in descriptive approach, which is gaining popularity around the world, you first describe the language. And if there are variations, for example, when I teach English, I also teach English. When I teach English, many students would ask me, sir, this word has 2 pronunciations, or this word has 2 spellings. And I tell them that, okay, this is American pronunciation, this is American spelling, this is British, or British spelling or pronunciation. And such variations do exist in Dzongkha.
I see.
So when you describe the language, such variations surface. And those should be documented. But in prescriptive approach, we tend to ignore these differences.
Yes. And your focus, I mean, it's not just on Dzongkha. You were also mentioning how even native languages need to be given as much importance as well.
Yes. I strongly believe that after a successful political democracy, it may be time for us to think about linguistic democracy, where all native languages are studied, explored, and included in the curriculum. But Dzongkha and English can still remain as the main national language. But if other languages like Khenka, Pumtapkha, Tsangla, there are George Van Drim enumerates around 19 languages, but he, I think, excluded some languages again here. If I may mention languages like Tamang, Mongar, all these languages also are relatives of Dzongkha language, but Lhosamkha is not. Lhosamkha belongs to another linguistic family, Indo-European. Except Lhosamkha, all other languages belong to a Tibeto-Burman language, cousins of Dzongkha.
I must
Dzongkha
also bring it
language.
because you already brought in Professor Van Drum. He was there on
Yes,
Dawa show,
yes,
Dawa Kudin.
yes, yeah.
And then he mentioned something that was very interesting to me, how
Yes.
Dzongkha is actually the origin of Tibeto-Burmese languages. If that is true, it is exciting for you as a linguist then.
Oh yes, when I was doing my master's in the late in 2000 to be very exact, 2000 yes, we would study these language families of different languages, Tibeto-Burman and then Indo-European. Then I would think why Dzongkha is not there in the list of languages that are there in the Tibeto-Burman language family. It's not there, but all other languages are there. But when I refer literature now, Dzongkha appears there. It's there in the Tibeto-Burman language family, and I attribute this credit to Professor George Van Drum and DDC, because he studied Dzongkha in collaboration with DDC. Now coming back to your origin of this Tibeto-Burman language family in Bhutan, that is Dzongkha being the original language, I'm a little skeptical about this. When we study language in order to establish or reconstruct the language families, we have different models. The first one is genetic approach, genetic model, where we assume that languages would have derived once upon a time from a common ancestor. Then based on the written remains, we explore the language and try to affiliate languages to their linguistic family. Second approach is typological. We call it typological model. We pick up languages and compare those languages in terms of the presence of consonants, vowels, sounds, how words are formed, how sentence structures are formed, and then accordingly we again put those languages under linguistic family. Yet third approach, model that we use is a mathematical model. We call it lexico-statistical. We look at we select a collection of words and mathematically or statistically test those words, the commonness and the differences, and accordingly assign languages to their linguistic family. And a more recent one, which you have mentioned, is genomic, where they study the genomes, DNAs. I'm not very familiar with this model. It's fairly a recent one. Yes. And if Professor George Van Drum claims that, according to his study, his genomic study, Dzongkha is the original language in the Tibeto-Burman language family, I think the Tibeto-Burman linguists would be very interested and very intrigued. It's going to be news. It will be news for them. Yes, I would think so. Yes,
and also,
yes.
finally, Love, your
Yes,
interest in linguistics. You were a student of commerce when you were in college.
Yes,
How did the shift happen then for you, La?
That's very interesting. I think every learner has some kind of aptitude to a certain subject. Right from my high school and throughout college, I did my BCom, by the way, Bachelor's in Commerce. And even though I was doing my Bachelor's in Commerce, I tend to score higher grades in language-related subjects. Yes. And then after I finished my BCom studies, I met a professor of linguistics then in the Northeastern Hill University in Shillong. And I talked to him about my aptitude rather than interest, because I did not know anything about linguistics then. So I told him informally that I had certain peculiar aptitude on language and language studies, though I belong to commerce, a different discipline. Then he said, why not explore linguistics? So that is how I got into linguistics from BCom. And in Indian universities, in undergrad level, you don't have linguistics as a subject. So I had that advantage. Anybody with a bachelor's degree, be from commerce or science or arts or any subject, could join linguistics after passing your entrance test. So that is how I got into
And you've enjoyed this
linguistics.
journey as a linguist so far and continue to do so.
So far so good, and I wish to do so.
Les, it's been fascinating talking to you. I wish we had more time to explore everything that you've learned so far, but I mean, it was really valuable. Even that little insight you gave me about how you pronounce certain words, it's been very, very valuable. Thank you so much for coming on Talking Matters.
The pleasure is all mine.